Hello and welcome to the OKPreps Extra Show. I'm Patrick Prince, joined as always by Barry Lewis. So, this is actually our second attempt at this show. We recorded a version yesterday. That was before dale-condict is set to become the new Muskogee coach. So, we're going to do two clips here. We're going to briefly talk about Coach Condict and that expected move. There's a vote on Friday, but looks like he's going to go to Muskogee. So, we'll briefly talk about that. And then following that, we're going to get into the regularly scheduled show that we did the day before. So, we're not doing wardrobe changes. You will notice our clothes are different. We're not concert artists. We're not doing wardrobe changes mid-show. It's just a 1 week thing. So let's get into it, Barry. Dale-Condict on his way to Muskogee, seemingly anyway. Again, there's a vote on Friday, but looks like that's probably going to happen. Your thoughts on that move? He's been at Wagner a long time, been very successful. What are your thoughts on the move?
Whenever the Muskogee job has popped open, as it has a few times during the past 20 years, Dale Condit's name had been usually mentioned as one of the possibilities to become Muskogee's new head coach. But obviously, until now, that had never occurred. I think from Dale's standpoint, and again, nothing's official, haven't talked with him about it. I think perhaps there may be a couple things in play now. Probably looking for a new challenge. He's done pretty well, all you can do at Wagner. And with 6 state titles, going to the quarterfinals every year for 20 years, isn't that incredible for a school which didn't have a history of football success before he got there? And so looking, because people have always wondered, well, could he do it at a higher level than 4A? Well, now everyone will get to see if he can do it at a higher level than 4A. And he goes to a program at Muskogee that is obviously, they've had a lot of success for the last few years. And now it's not like a program he's going to have to rebuild like he did at Wagner or turn around. He just has to basically maintain what they've been doing and build on what Travis Hill did at Muskogee. So it's not like he's starting from scratch. Real good situation. Muskogee has a lot of resources it can provide him. And I think Dale probably looked at 20 years. That's a good round number at Wagner. He's done everything he can there. What a good opportunity. If you're ever going to make this move, now would seem to be a good time to do it at Muskogee. I'm just surprised from Muskogee's standpoint why they didn't go after him, make him go after him earlier instead of going through everything they went through with Matt Hennessy the other night. I mean, obviously Matt Hennessy is a great coach, but it just seems like strange they just didn't go with Dale first, considering all the championships he's won.
Is Muskogee a better job than Wagner?
I would say it's really hard to say exactly what the Wagner job is right now because if the Wagner job is a real good job because of the last 20 years, because what Dale Condict did there when he became the head coach there, they hadn't had any success. So he has made it into a really good job, a lot better job than when he was hired there as head coach. I think at this point, because of the new facilities at Muskogee, I would think the Muskogee job would probably, you can make an argument on either side, but I think right now the Muskogee job, everything being equal, would probably be a little bit better job than the Wagner job. And part of that is because it's 6A too.
Okay, Barry, thanks for the information on that. And we will go back to the previously recorded portion of the show. Barry, you were there to see Rejoice Christian win its first ever football state title with a win over Hooker. What'd you see in that one?
Well, as I wrote, it was a David versus Goliath matchup from a physical standpoint. So I think most of the people around the state, at least especially those from outside the Tulsa area, thought that Hooker had a definite advantage. Most people were picking Hooker. I think we were probably the only outlet that had Rejoice Christian as number one in the state ahead of Hooker. And to me, it seemed like a coin flip going in, but we've given Rejoice the edge. since the middle of the season as the number one team. But Hooker is just so physically, I mean, they're so much bigger than Rejoice, but you can't measure the heart. And Rejoice has really good speed, um, very skilled, and in the showdown last week, that was um, Rejoice pretty well dominated most of the game except for the first 2 minutes. And I was really surprised. I thought it was going to be a close game, go down to the wire. Instead, Rejoice won by 3 touchdowns. And they were really, I guess this shows part of a championship mentality. Even at the very end, Rejoice had a goal line stand. The outcome was not in doubt. But at the end of the game, Hooker had the ball threatening to score. And it was really important for the Rejoice players to keep them out of the end zone. They stopped them at the 1 on the final play. So I guess that is part of that championship mentality. So kudos to all involved with the Rejoice program, because Hooker also had the advantage going into the game. They had been to the state championship game before last year, and so they had that experience. And for Rejoice, it was a first time thing. And I liked what Coach Brett Marley, he thought when I talked to him early in the week, he wanted to make sure everyone had fun that week, because he had talked about how 20 years earlier, when he was an assistant at Victory, and his only other championship game experience, that they were just so focused on winning the gold ball, winning the gold ball. And there's nothing wrong with that, but he said he wanted to make sure it didn't necessarily make for an enjoyable experience, and they wound up losing. He wanted to make sure, win or lose, that this was an enjoyable experience. So Rejoice seemed to come in very relaxed. And it's always that fine line of you want to be intense, but you want to be relaxed and you want to enjoy the experience. You don't want to be too tight. And I think Rejoice was able to achieve that last week and had fun. And of course, there's nothing more fun than also winning. I mean, I will remember their quarterback and Coach Marley's son, Kale. And also, you played a really good game on defense last week. That in the championship line, when they were waiting to receive their gold medals, he kept on saying, "We did it, we did it." And that was alluding to a promise that he'd made to his dad after a playoff loss when he was a freshman, that they were going to win a state championship. So it reminded me of Jalen Montanati promising his dad, also the head coach of the Wausau basketball team, a couple years ago after a tough playoff loss before Jalen was on the varsity, that he promised his dad that they're going to win a championship. So maybe that's a link between these Owasso-based schools. So Cale Marley had gone through some really physical adversity with injuries and missed most of last year with the knee injury, and missed some time this year with the hamstring injury. Only really got 100% healthy when the playoffs started. And that had been an issue with Rejoice through the years. They've been in the playoffs every year. They've been in the OSSA, but they just had never been, or rarely been, healthy come playoff time, especially at the starting quarterback position. Mm-hmm. Saw that a couple of years ago with Chance Wilson. And so they finally were healthy. Everything came together. And then there were some really amazing stories, which we've written about players who they didn't expect to be a part of the football program this year, really talented players who are part of the Rejoice family already, that they came back to football, or they came back to Rejoice football. Like at least three key players did that. And that's something that, like, even 7 months ago, they weren't envisioning. Maverick Gwynn, who had 16 tackles, he's primarily focused on baseball. He came back to football after not playing last year. They're really good wide receiver. ZZ, we'll just call him ZZ. He's now being recruited by schools like Iowa State, but he was focusing on basketball last year. Then their running back, Noah Goodwin, he was playing in Alaska last season, and all of a sudden in May, they'd been a part of the Rejoice family. His parents are missionaries. They were in Alaska. They decided to come back to Rejoice from Alaska. So a lot of really good things, neat things came together for Rejoice.
Well, and I'm real happy for Coach Marley, because, I got to be around the Rejoice program a few years ago when we first started our player diary. We started with Chance Wilson, And so I got to really kind of feel like get inside the Rejoice program a little bit. And first off, I think Coach Marley is a really good coach, but I was really struck by he's and I know he's not the only one. I know a lot of coaches try to do this, but he's as interested in building men as building a program. And I really like the way that he goes about that and some of his messaging and some of the things that he does with his program. Was really impressed when I got to see some of those things a couple years ago. So congratulations to him. Congratulations to the Rejoice football team. It was good. It was good to see. And also I want to give a shout out to our photographer, Mike Simons, really captured some great moments of that game. Not only the Gatorade splash on Coach Marley, but just some really good action shots and some. I really thought your coverage, Barry, and Mike Simons' photos of that game. We like to treat big things big at the Tulsa World and really give things their due justice in our coverage. And I feel like you and Mr. Simons did that. It was good to see.
Thanks, Patrick. And Mike certainly did a wonderful job, as did that night where Daniel Schuler was able to capture Woodland's state championship game superbly. So great job by those guys.
Yep. And okay, moving on a little bit from that, Barry, I don't think we wrote about this. Remind me, but there was an issue. I don't know if it was a Twitter thing or what, where a team had a coach from another team on the sidelines during a game. What was that deal?
Newcastle and Guthrie.
And
And
explain that for those who.
it was in the 5A semifinals. And to try to make a long story short, Guthrie defeated Newcastle in the semifinals, and Guthrie wound up losing to Carl Albert in the championship game. But anyway, going back to the semifinal game, Guthrie, who had one of their former coaches who was now employed by Deer Creek, I believe, he had one of their former coaches on the sidelines for that game. And that's not necessary. I mean, they're not the first team to have done that. There have been other teams through the years to have a former coach come back after that coach's team has been eliminated in the playoffs and helped out. I mean, just as a friendly favor for the coach they used to work for. And so that wasn't like a unique situation, but Newcastle put in an objection because the way they read the OSSA rule book, they thought that was illegal and they wanted the game to be forfeited. And that wound up getting brought up at an OSSA board meeting. And well, they appealed and then that got turned down and they got brought up again at OSSA board meeting. And I think the bottom line out of all this is that rule will be clarified to make clear. The intent of the rule was as long as the coach's current employer was okay with that, then there's no problem.
You kind of thought it was much ado about nothing, yes?
Yeah, because other schools have done this. We've seen this before, so I didn't know why such a big deal. Well, I guess I know why a big deal was because they thought they could get a forfeit out of it. But I was really surprised that it really erupted into such a thing where the OSSA had to come out and make a statement that saying, no, this appeal is being denied.
So what is the OSSAA rule? It's allowed, right?
The wording is vague, but I guess it all depends how you interpret the rule, as it is in a lot of rules. That's the bottom line out of this is that there will be a clarification of that rule when the next OSSA football manual comes out.
Okay. What do you think of Micah T's leaving A&M and winding up at the University of Tulsa?
I think TU needs receivers. I think that's potentially really good for TU.
Yeah, I've always kind of rooted for Micah T's. I saw him play a number of games as a senior at Booker T. Washington. He was one of the state's top recruits coming out that year. And I had him on a podcast after he had just gone to A&M. I think it may have been in August. Like camp had just started, I think, and he did the podcast. We did a Zoom from his dorm room, I think. And First time I'd ever talked to him. I'm sure you've talked to him a number of times, but I never had, and was just really impressed with him. And just seemed like a real mature young man. And so yeah, I just kind of been rooting for him. So that's great. Love to see Tulsa getting a good receiver, and should be fun getting to watch him play locally again.
Yeah, it's always great, I think, for Tulsa to recruit local players or players who are based locally. Uh, and you hope that then that will give, especially in these days of the transfer portal, if a player has roots here, then they won't be able so willing at the drop of a hat or at the first taste of success to go to another offer so quickly. That'll be harder for them to move on. There might be more incentive for them to stay in Tulsa because that's a battle that not just Tulsa, but every school seems to be facing in these days.
Yeah.
And we see it even for teams that are in the football playoff.
Yeah.
Keeping your team together, even going into the playoff.
Yeah. All right, let's change gears a little bit. Let's talk a little basketball. We got the Tournament of Champions at the BOK Center, what, December 26th to the 28th? What do you want to say
Yes.
about what do you want to say about that?
Yes, it's always a great event. It's the premier regular season showcase in state high school basketball at the BOK Center. Games start at 9 a.m. every day, alternate girls, boys, and they run. Usually the last game starts at 8:30 that night. So it's basically you can watch basketball. Well, there is an intermission after the fourth game, but you can watch basketball, stay downtown and watch basketball. You have to leave the arena seating bowl, but basically you can watch basketball from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. every day, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, December 26th through the 28th. Some great players there, including Jalen Montanati from Owasso. Owasso won the state title last year, but did not win the Tournament of Champions. So that'll
Who beat
give
him?
them
Who beat him?
Edmond North. Of course, Owasso won the rematch in the state championship game, as seems to happen quite a lot, that you'll see two teams meet in the championship game and then they'll meet again in the state tournament. And a lot of times the result is flipped in the state tournament. So great girls and boys action. And also want to let people know about Memorial they've revamped their annual Memorial Veterans Arena Invitational this year. It used to be, it used to be a 3-day event, boys only, where the boys would trade off teams. So, but this year it's a 2-day event, girls on Friday, December 20th, and boys on Saturday, December 21st. And you've got 6 games starting at 12:30 and going in the last tip-offs at 8 p.m. Some of the top teams in the area and in the state are going at it. So you've got 6 girls games on Friday, 6 boys games on Saturday. The marquee game on Friday, the girls game would be Lincoln Christian versus Edmond North. That's at 8 p.m. And then you've got Memorial versus Edmond North at 8 p.m. in the boys game on Saturday. So a lot of good basketball at Memorial Friday and Saturday.
Absolutely. All right, let's leave it there for this week. Barry, appreciate all the information as always. You and I will talk next week and we'll catch up then.
Sounds good.